I wrote that with tears in my eyes at the time. But you want to know how I felt from nearly dying? If you want the real story, I've got you. I'll tell you what nearly dying did to me. I will tell you anything you want to know. So let me go. I wrote down an article a long time ago that was very personal to me. And I'm just going to read it off for you, verbatim, okay? Because I don't want to paraphrase it. I want you to know. I want you to know exactly what was going on in my head at that time. Okay. I'm going to just do a reading. Bear with me, okay? A Dance with Death. It's difficult to discuss, and it's taken me some time to get to this point. Because I fear my views might hurt those that are close to me, and if you read this, all I ask is that you forgive potentially my own naivete. Because far too often young fools seek to romanticize their own deaths, and for the longest time I wondered what sort of man I would be in the face of my own demise. And all my natural predilections surely should have inclined me to an unfathomable terror. And yet, as my motorcycle started to wobble at 75 miles an hour, I was not confronted with fear, but I was confronted with peace and understanding. And for eons, humans have looked to flight as a symbol of freedom, and certainly this experience was no exception, as I slowly careened headfirst through the skies into the median of 441. I've always wanted to die with dignity, and I never knew I had the tools. In the aftermath, I would revisit the event again and again in my mind. And it was something akin to what my mother experienced in her violent end, right? It had to be. And it brought a sense of peace after all these years, as I thought and I empathized with her plight, and I touched upon the precipice of the void. Perhaps in a way it stirred hope that she too could find peace among such tragedy, that she could be enlightened, and that the crash could mend more wounds that it had opened. My crash. One fractured spinal column, several pulled tendons, one concussion, retrograde amnesia, and a brand new series of facial scars later. I felt alive in those moments. It's funny how the closer we get to death, the more alive we feel. That's the paradox, isn't it? Something beautiful, in the grace of which that which swept me off my feet. The only contradiction to that bliss was my debt to the hospital that scooped me up off the road. It was not dying, but the price of surviving that struck daggers into the back of my mind in an American healthcare system. Tens of thousands of dollars. What would eventually be a 6-hour stay for only what would eventually be a 6-hour stay, an MRI, some stitches and staples as I crawled out of that hospital to avoid a financial debt for the rest of my life. That's first world slavery, and ironically enough, I racked it. In an industry that had 3,000% markups, in a standard which imprisons those that we save, my belief in the American healthcare system died that day. I never went back as a surgical technologist. How could I support a system that preys on those that need it the most? And still, in spite of that, I smiled. Adrenaline still coursing. I'm a masochist, obviously. I cracked jokes as they sewed through my gaping brow. Don't slip now, a response to the cascade of the blood. And do those feelings make me a bad person? It's a futile question to a subjective concept. In times of hardship, you learn things, not only about yourself, but about those that you have surrounded yourself with, where they stood at my bedside. My friends, those whom I'd come to view as family, more still waited beyond the hospital doors, unaware of my current predicament. I had for myself succeeded. In a way, I confronted death, and I knew who I was. I discovered what kind of man I was in the face of my own demise, and yet, in spite of that success, I had failed them. And the reflection of their eyes, revealing the bitter truth, the reality of what I had put them through. Moreover, what still I had almost put them through further, came crashing in, and in that moment, I finally cried. So to answer your question, that's what I would attribute to the experience of my motorcycle crash. Thank you.